So yeah, some really, really dark thoughts that I didn't share with anybody. And hi everyone, my name is Nell. Welcome to my kitchen table. I am going to talk to you guys today about my journey and struggles with postpartum anxiety and intrusive thoughts. If any of these things might be triggering for you, please just skip ahead, okay? So about 5 years ago, I was pregnant with my first daughter, and I had a plan of how everything was going to go. I'm very perfectionistic, type A, and I thought everything would go as planned. And as really anyone will tell you, babies have their own way of doing things. They come into this world with their own agendas. So really, you're just there to support who they're going to become. So I had a very, very difficult birth process. I am a retired professional dancer, but was still dancing at the time. And I thought that I would be able to have an unmedicated labor. I thought I knew my body the best of anybody, and I had done all the research. I had my birth plan. I thought it was going to be the most beautiful experience and empowering experience for me and for my daughter to come into the world. However, babies have their own agendas, and it ended up being a very, what I later discovered was traumatic labor. Just because everyone ends up being okay doesn't mean that everything was okay. So I had pretty much any form of induction that could be done. I did the balloon catheter. They inserted the misoprostol. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. I'm not a doctor. Just any and all interventions to get labor moving were done. I thought, being at 41 weeks or almost 42 weeks, that it wouldn't be too invasive. But it ended up being about 36 hours of unmedicated labor, which I then finally begged for a C-section, which they said that they don't do for healthy moms and healthy babies, understandably. So after 36 hours of very intense pain, I begged for a C-section, and then luckily was able to get an epidural after about 3 tries of them trying to insert the needle in my back. After 42 hours of labor, my beautiful daughter was born, and I hadn't been able to really feel that connected to her during my pregnancy. I had a lot of morning sickness. I struggled a lot with anxiety during pregnancy, constantly fearing, like if I didn't feel her move, I was constantly Googling the likelihood of stillbirth. I was Googling the likelihood of me dying in childbirth. I'm a baseline anxious human being, which I'm working on. But pregnancy definitely exacerbated those thoughts and those feelings. So once she was born, I still didn't feel connected to her, which I wish I had known that was a sign of perinatal mood disorder. I would look at her and not feel anything, and I would just kind of like search her features and be like, does she look like me? I worked so hard to bring her into this world and I don't feel anything. What's wrong with me? And, I was just constantly fearing that there was something very, very wrong with me because I wasn't feeling attached to my baby. I also, was constantly cleaning the house, like obsessively cleaning the house and making sure everything was spotless, making sure she was perfectly on schedule, micromanaging my husband, micromanaging any caregivers, any grandparents that came to help. I was unable to rest. And I remember my mom begging me and saying, like, honey, you've got to lie down, you've got to rest. And I was literally incapable of resting. I was hyperactive, and once again, huge red flag, but nobody told me and nobody knew. And I just thought that's what good moms do. Good moms are just cleaning all the time and busy. And yeah, and I was so far removed from myself that I couldn't even recognize how bad off I was. So after 6 weeks, I went back to work. I went back to teaching dance. I thought it would make me feel normal again. And that's when the intrusive thoughts really began. I had had some intrusive thoughts prior to going back to work of just, especially middle of the night feedings were very, very lonely. And, I was constantly fearing like if she was still breathing at night, the risk of SIDS. And, I'd Googled all of that. Like, please don't Google anything. And then my husband had also had intrusive thoughts as well. The baby would cry and cry and cry and cry and cry. And of course we would set her down in a safe place and walk away and take breaks and breathe and all the things. But, we looked at each other one time and we were like, he told me sometimes I just want to throw her against the wall to make the crying stop. And, that's another sign that your partner can also have a perinatal mood disorder. It's also increasingly likely if the birthing partner is dealing with anxiety and depression, that it's 50% more likely that the non-birthing partner will struggle with it as well. But nobody had told us. Nobody knew. And on the outside, we were keeping up all of the appearances and, picture perfect, not showing any sign of struggle. Anytime anyone came over, the house was perfectly spotless and clean. The baby was perfectly dressed. We were perfectly dressed. I had my makeup on. I had my hair done. And, no one knew how much we were struggling. Then, like I said, I went back to work and the intrusive thoughts really took hold. I began to, I would have very deep fears about if I turned down certain roads. I was convinced I would get shot and die. I was convinced, or I convinced myself that maybe I would be better off if I just drove my car into a concrete barrier. I was constantly doing the mental math of how much milk I had pumped and frozen, and how long my child would be able to live without me. So yeah, some really, really dark thoughts that I didn't share with anybody. And I'm honestly very amazed that I came out on the other side of it without any professional help. I so desperately wish that I had gotten professional help, but I didn't know that there was anything wrong with me. So I'm here to tell you, intrusive thoughts are normal. Anxiety is normal. Depression is normal, but you need to get help. Talk to your healthcare provider, talk to your partner. Please don't suffer alone. Once I had my second daughter, that's when I really truly realized how deep down in a hole I'd been with my first. My second birth experience was just so dramatically different, and my postpartum experience was so different. I knew that the love would come eventually, and I knew it was okay to not feel connected to somebody that I had just met, even though I had grown them inside me for 10 months. So it was then that it truly sank in how bad my anxiety and intrusive thoughts had been, because I didn't struggle with them. I had a little bit of it, but nothing like the first time around. So yes, please, if you're struggling with this, do not struggle alone. You can find me on Instagram over at Awakening Through Parenthood. Please drop me a message in my DMs. I am here to be a guide and a resource for you. Talk to your partner, talk to your healthcare professional, and there's nothing wrong with getting help. And getting help is the hardest part, and that's the bravest thing to do. It's much easier to suffer in silence, but sometimes the suffering is just too much, and not everyone makes it out on the other side. So this is my story, and I hope it helps you, and pass it along to anybody in your life who might struggle in the future or who might be struggling right now, because nobody should have to go through this alone. All right, sending you all the biggest hug, and as always, you can find me over at Awakening Through Parenthood, and let's do this together. Thank you guys.